The room was dark. The only light came from 6 small screens on the wall in front of her, each one showing a different part of her house. Her living room, her kitchen, her bedroom, the hallway, the front door, the garden. Vivian Cole sat in a chair and watched. She watched her sister standing in front of her bedroom mirror trying on her jewelry, picking up pieces, dropping them into her bag like they belonged to her. She watched her brother pour himself a drink from her cabinet like a man who owned the place. She did not cry. She had already done her crying. Now she just watched. 3 weeks ago these same people had stood around her grave and wept for her. They had held each other and said all the right things. They had told everyone who would listen that Vivian Cole was the most generous woman they had ever known. Then they had gone straight to her house and started taking everything she owned. But how did it come to this? To understand that you need to go back to the beginning. Back to the woman she was before the warehouse. Before the screens. Before she learned the most painful lesson of her life. This is the story of Vivian Cole. And it starts the way most painful stories start. With love. And people who did not deserve it. If you are new here, welcome. Make sure you stay until the very end of this story because what happens in the final chapter will leave you speechless. And if you enjoy stories like this one, please consider subscribing so you never miss another one. Now let us get back to where this all began. Vivian Cole was 38 years old and she never stopped moving. She was a widow. Her husband James had died 3 years ago and left her with 2 children and a grief she had never fully had time to sit with because someone always needed something. She had Liam, who was 11, Ava, who was 8. Both wonderful. Both completely unaware of how hard their mother worked to make their lives look effortless. She ran Cole Logistics and Property Group. Offices in London, Dubai, Toronto and Johannesburg. A business she had built from nothing with her own 2 hands. She was a billionaire. She was also the only reason her entire family had a roof over their heads. It was not just her family either. She had 2 close friends, Sandra and Pauline, women she had known since her early days in London. Sandra's rent, Pauline's car, her children's uniforms. Vivian gave quietly and without keeping score because that was simply who she was. She gave to everyone. Without complaint. Without condition. Without ever once being asked how she was doing. Every morning Raymond was already in the kitchen before Vivian came downstairs. Raymond was her chef. 32 years old. Calm, hardworking and completely reliable. He set her coffee down as she walked in without being asked. Black. No sugar. Morning, he said. Morning, Raymond, she said. Simple. Easy. That was how their mornings started. Sophie was already moving through the house. She was Vivian's maid. 24 years old. Quiet and sharp-eyed. She noticed everything and said very little. She greeted Vivian with a small smile and kept moving. Diane arrived at 9:30. She did not knock. Diane Cole never knocked at her younger sister's house. She was 46 years old. Beautiful, loud and completely comfortable spending money she had never earned. She was Vivian's older sister and had not held a steady job in years. Everything Diane had came from Vivian. Her rent. Her bills. Her clothes. Her holidays. Her children's school fees. Every single bit of it paid for by her younger sister every month without fail. She dropped her bag on the counter. Ada, I need to talk to you about something. Vivian did not look up from her laptop. How much, Diane? You never even let me explain. How much? Diane told her. It was a lot. Vivian transferred it without argument. Without questions. Without flinching. You are an angel, Ada. Honestly. Vivian said nothing. She had heard that before. Victor called at noon. Victor Cole was Vivian's younger brother. 32 years old. Handsome, charming and completely full of excuses. Married to a quiet, exhausted woman named Claire with 2 little boys. Noah, who was 4, and Jake, who was 2. Victor did not work. Vivian paid for everything he had. His rent, his bills, his children's needs, Claire's groceries. All of it. Every single month. Sis. Claire's car needs fixing. The boys need winter coats. The boiler. Send me the details. You are the best. There is nobody like you. She hung up. Nobody like her. She used to think that was a compliment. That evening Solomon called. Solomon Stone was Vivian's best friend and her lawyer. 43 years old. Straight-talking and sharp-minded. 9 years of friendship, and he had never once asked her for anything. He was the only person in her life who always told her the truth. "Did you give Diane money again today?" he said. She needed it. Solomon. "Your Dubai office closed a £14 million deal today. Did anyone in your family call to congratulate you?" She looked at the untouched wine on her desk. Nobody had called. Not Diane. Not Victor. Not Sandra. Not Pauline. Nobody. "They are my family," she said. "I know," Solomon said. "But one day, Vivian, you are going to need them. Really need them. And I want you to think carefully about what you believe will happen on that day." She did not answer. Because deep down she already knew. She just was not ready to say it out loud. The business trouble came first. A major client in Dubai pulled out unexpectedly. A shipment in Toronto stalled for 6 weeks. A property deal in Johannesburg hit legal problems. Within 8 weeks, Vivian was facing a cash flow problem serious enough to threaten everything she had built. She needed help. Just a short-term loan. Something to hold things steady while she recovered. She would pay it back. Every penny. She called Diane first. "Ada, you know I would help if I could. But things are really tight right now." Vivian recognized some of those tight expenses. She had paid for them. "Of course," she said quietly. "Do not worry." She called Victor. He said all the right things. Told her he would look into it. 3 days passed. He did not call back. When she called him, he said his situation was too tight right now, but she would sort it out because she always did. She hung up. She had funded these people for years. Between Diane and Victor, she had paid out more money than most people would see in a lifetime. And when she needed them once, just once, they could not manage it. She sorted the business out herself. It took 2 hard months. But she came out the other side the way she always did. Stronger than she went in. 3 months after that, Vivian started getting headaches. Deep and sharp. Sitting right behind her eyes like something pressing from the inside. They came without warning and stayed longer each time. She ignored them and kept moving. Raymond noticed she was leaving food on her plate and holding the side of her head when she thought nobody was looking. He watched her more carefully after that. Sophie found 3 empty painkiller packets in the bathroom bin in 1 week. She said nothing. But she started appearing with a glass of water without being asked and making sure the house was calm in the evenings. Diane visited twice that week. Both times for money. She talked for 40 minutes about how expensive everything was without once noticing that Vivian's hands were shaking when she made the transfer. Victor called 3 times. Money for a night out. Nursery fees. A new business idea that was going to change everything. It was always a new idea. Nothing ever changed. Neither of them asked how she was feeling. Not once. On a cold Wednesday morning, Vivian went to see a doctor. She told nobody. The results came on a Friday afternoon. Liam and Ava were at school. Raymond was in the kitchen. Sophie was upstairs. She answered on the second ring. She listened. She asked 3 questions. Calm and clear the way she handled everything. Then she thanked the doctor and hung up. A brain tumor. Aggressive. Months. Not years. She sat very still for a long time. Then she looked at James's photograph on the desk. "I did not see that coming," she whispered. Then she opened her laptop and went back to work. Because Liam and Ava would be home in 2 hours and their mother was going to be at that door when they arrived. She called Solomon that evening and told him everything. "We are going to look at every option," he said immediately. "Solomon, just be my friend right now. Not my lawyer. Just my friend." "I'm here," he said softly. "I'm right here." For the first time since that phone call, something in her chest loosened slightly. Then she told him about going to Diane and Victor for help with the business 3 months earlier, and how they had both turned her away. Solomon was quiet for a very long time. "Are you going to tell them about the diagnosis?" he asked finally. She thought about Diane asking for holiday money while her hands shook. She thought about Victor saying things were too tight while spending money she had given him. "Yes," she said. "I will tell them." She paused. "And then we will see." Solomon understood exactly what she meant. She told Diane the next morning. Diane grabbed her hand and cried for 30 seconds. Then she said, "What does this mean for the house?" Not about treatment. Not about Liam and Ava. The house. She told Victor that same evening. He paced. He said this could not be right. He said they needed another doctor. For 2 minutes Vivian thought maybe Victor was going to surprise her. Then he sat down and said, "That property you have in East London. There might be a buyer interested. If the worst happens, it would be good to have a plan." She stared at her brother. "I'm just being practical," he said. "Of course," she said quietly. She met Sandra and Pauline for coffee 2 days later and told them what the doctor had said. Sandra changed the subject to a problem with her landlord. Pauline asked if Vivian had sorted out who would handle her finances while she was unwell. Neither of them asked how she was feeling. Neither of them offered anything. Vivian drove home and sat in her car outside her house for 10 minutes. She was not angry. She was simply done being surprised. That night she called Solomon. "I want to fake my death," she said. Silence. "I want to disappear and watch from somewhere safe. I want to see what they do when they think I am gone. What people do when they think nobody is watching. That is the truth." Solomon did not speak for a long time. "That is either the most brilliant thing you have ever said or the most dangerous," he said finally. "Which do you think?" she asked. "Both," he said. "Absolutely both. But before any of that," he said firmly, "we are getting you the best specialist in London. The plan and the treatment happen together. You do not get to disappear and give up on yourself at the same time." "Will you help me?" she asked. "You already know the answer," he said. And she did. The cameras went up on a Tuesday. Vivian hired a private security company that did not know her. Paid cash. Every room covered. Every corner. Every angle. Nothing missed. Everything fed directly to 6 monitors in a warehouse she owned across the city. A space she had quietly prepared. A bed. A bathroom. A kettle. 6 screens on the wall. There was also a small medical area in the corner. Because Solomon had kept his word. A specialist had been brought in quietly. A treatment plan had been started. Aggressive but promising. Vivian was fighting on 2 fronts at the same time. The tumor. And the truth. Solomon's wife Margaret came to the house before the plan began. Margaret was a quiet and gifted woman who worked with her hands. She created things so detailed and real that people had to look twice. What she created this time was a replica body. Crafted and shaped and colored so carefully that lying still in a closed coffin it would convince anyone who looked that they were seeing Vivian Cole. Vivian looked at it when it was finished and felt a chill move through her. "Thank you," she whispered. Margaret held her hands and said nothing. Sometimes there are no words. Solomon also arranged everything with the doctor. A controlled medication that would slow Vivian's heart rate and breathing to levels so low that anyone finding her would see everything that looked like death. It would last 4 hours. Enough time for the ambulance. The hospital. The declaration. It was not without risk. Vivian said do it anyway. The night before the plan, Vivian recorded a video on her phone. She said she loved her children more than anything she had ever owned or built. She said Liam and Ava were not to be told she was gone. They were to be told she was away on a long business trip. She said the will was not to be read until Solomon decided the time was right. She said she trusted Solomon Stone completely. She sent it to his private email. For when the time comes. Solomon came to the house on a Thursday evening. They went over every detail one final time. When they finished, Vivian looked around her living room. Her paintings. Her children's school photographs. Ava's throw blanket on the sofa. James's watch in the glass case by the fireplace. She looked at all of it for a long time. "Are you sure?" Solomon asked. "I have never been more sure of anything," she said. The doctor administered the medication. Vivian lay down on her bed and looked at James's photograph on the bedside table. "Watch over them," she whispered. "Please." Then she closed her eyes. Sophie was carrying laundry down the hallway when she noticed the bedroom door slightly open. She stepped inside. She stopped. Vivian was lying on the bed completely still. Eyes closed. One arm hanging off the mattress. The color completely gone from her face. The laundry hit the floor. "Mrs. Cole." "Nothing." "Mrs. Cole." She grabbed her hand. It was limp. Sophie opened her mouth and screamed with everything she had. Solomon was up the stairs before the scream finished. "Call an ambulance," he said. Completely steady. "Right now, Sophie. Go." Sophie ran. Solomon looked down at Vivian. For just one moment something real and frightened moved across his face that had nothing to do with any plan. Then he locked it away. Because this was what she had asked him to do. At the hospital, the doctor came out 40 minutes later. "I'm so sorry," she said quietly. "We did everything we could." Solomon closed his eyes for just a moment. Then he took out his phone. Diane arrived 45 minutes later. She collapsed against Solomon and wept. Raw and broken and completely uncontrolled. Victor arrived 12 minutes after that. He stood in the corridor with both hands on his head saying, "No," over and over like a man who had lost every other word. Sandra and Pauline arrived together crying and saying all the right things about what a wonderful woman Vivian had been. In the warehouse across the city, Vivian was already there. Awake. Pale and weak but watching everything on her screen. They were all crying. Really crying. She felt something pull in her chest. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe. She pressed her fingers to her mouth and watched. And waited. The burial was held 9 days later. Liam and Ava were not there. They had been told their mother was away on a very important business trip and were staying safely with a trusted friend of Solomon's. Completely unaware. Vivian had insisted on this. The church was full. The replica Margaret had created lay in the closed coffin at the front. Still. Silent. Convincing. Diane wept through the entire service. Victor stood with Claire and cried openly. Sandra and Pauline dabbed their eyes in the third row. Claire stood very still throughout. Not crying loudly like the others. Just staring at the coffin with the expression of a woman turning something over carefully in her mind. Vivian watched her own burial from the warehouse and felt everything and said nothing. 3 days after the burial, Solomon gathered Diane and Victor in Vivian's living room and played the video. Vivian's face appeared on the screen. Diane gasped. Victor made a small broken sound. On screen, Vivian said, "Liam and Ava are not to be told I am gone. Tell them I am away on a business trip. The will is not to be read yet. Not until Solomon releases it. Please respect this. It is my final wish." The video ended. "Of course," Diane said, wiping her eyes. "Whatever she wanted." "Absolutely," Victor said. "Whatever she needed." Solomon nodded and said nothing. In the warehouse, Vivian watched her family leave her house. She had heard every word. She had heard the promises. She leaned back and looked at the 6 screens showing her empty house. Now, she thought. Let us see who you really are. 4 days after the burial, Diane and Victor moved in. No phone call to Solomon. No asking anyone. No waiting. Removal vans. Bags and boxes. Both families arriving like people who had been waiting for this moment. Vivian watched it all from the warehouse. She called Solomon. I can see it, he said before she could speak. Breathe. We let it play out. She put the phone down and watched. Diane dismissed the entire household staff within 24 hours. Patricia the cleaner. George the gardener. Gone. Just like that. She turned to Sophie and Raymond. You two as well. Sophie did not move. Mrs. Cole was very good to us, she said quietly. We are not asking for pay. We are asking to stay for the children. Liam and Ava have already lost their mother. Please do not take the only familiar faces they have left. Raymond stepped forward. We will not be in your way. We just want to make sure the children are taken care of. Victor appeared in the doorway, eating from Vivian's biscuit tin. Just let them stay. Free staff. Why are you arguing? Diane looked at them with the expression of someone who had decided they were useful rather than deserving of kindness. Fine. But you follow my rules now. Not hers. In the warehouse, Vivian pressed both hands flat on the desk. Thank you, she thought. Thank you both. Victor called a property agent that same afternoon. Feet on Vivian's desk. Completely unbothered. The East London property. I need a valuation. As soon as possible. He did not even pretend to wait for the will. When Diane heard, she said, what about this house? Surely this one is worth more. We do not need the will, Victor said. We are family. This house belongs to us now. Diane nodded. Sandra called 2 days later asking about Vivian's jewelry collection. Said she was just checking things were being looked after properly. She and Diane laughed together on the phone. In the warehouse, Vivian felt the last small piece of doubt she had been carrying dissolve completely. She was not angry. She was simply clear. Liam and Ava were moved to the smallest room at the back of the house. Tyler took Liam's bedroom. Isla took Vivian's dressing room. One bed between the children the first night because nobody thought to sort it out. Sophie sorted it out. She dragged a spare mattress from the storage room at 10 o'clock at night and made it up with clean sheets and sat with Ava until she stopped crying and fell asleep. Raymond made the children hot chocolate. It was the only warm thing about that evening. Liam was too smart not to notice something was wrong. One evening he sat at the kitchen counter while Sophie was washing dishes. Sophie. Mummy has never gone on a trip without calling us every day. Sophie kept her hands in the water. Did not turn around immediately. Your mummy is in a place where calling is difficult, she said carefully. But she thinks about you every single second. I know that for certain. How do you know? Sophie turned around and looked at this boy who deserved so much more than the half-truths she was holding. Because I know your mother, she said. And there is nothing in this world that could make her stop loving you. Nothing. Liam looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. He did not fully believe her. But he held on. Claire tried once. She found Ava sitting alone in the hallway holding her stuffed rabbit and staring at nothing. She sat down beside her on the floor and put her arm around her gently. Ava leaned in. Then Victor called from upstairs. Claire. Come upstairs. Claire looked up at him. A conflict moved across her face. She stood up and went upstairs. She looked back at Ava once before she turned the corner. Ava was already alone again. On the 6th day, Diane walked past Liam in the hallway and told him to move because he was in the way. He was standing outside his old bedroom door, just looking at it. Because Tyler was inside it now and he could not go in anymore. He moved. Sophie saw it from the end of the hallway. She went to the kitchen and gripped the edge of the sink and breathed. Then she went and found Liam and asked if he wanted to help her make biscuits. He said yes. Because someone had to make him feel like he still existed. Vivian watched Sophie and Liam make biscuits on the screen. She watched her son laugh at something Sophie said. Small and brief but real. She pressed her fingers to the screen. Hold on, baby, she thought. Just hold on. Then she picked up the phone. It is time, Solomon, she said. Are you ready? He asked. She looked at the screens one last time. Sophie and Liam in the kitchen. Ava asleep clutching her stuffed rabbit. Diane laughing loudly on the phone. Victor with his feet on her desk. Yes, she said quietly. I am ready. 6. It was Sophie who made the decision to get the children out. The night it happened started over dinner. Ava accidentally knocked her juice across the table. It spilled onto Isla's lap, and before Sophie could move, Diane had crossed the room and grabbed Ava by the arm so roughly the little girl cried out, "You clumsy, stupid child." Liam was on his feet. Do not touch my sister. Victor appeared in the doorway. You do not raise your voice in this house. It is our house. Liam shouted back with every bit of his mother's fire in his 11-year-old chest. Victor grabbed Liam by the collar and dragged him toward the front door. Get out, he shouted, throwing it open. All of you. This is our house now. These are Mrs. Cole's children, Sophie started. Mrs. Cole is dead, Diane screamed. Get out before I call the police. Raymond put his hand gently on Liam's shoulder. Come, he said quietly. Come with us. The door slammed behind all four of them. Raymond had rented a small apartment 3 streets away 2 weeks earlier when he had seen the way things were going. That night Sophie sat with Ava until she fell asleep, and Raymond sat with Liam in the quiet because the boy did not want to be alone. Raymond, do you think Mummy is really on a business trip? Raymond looked at this steady, fierce boy who looked so much like his mother. I think your mother would move heaven and earth to get back to you, he said. I believe that with everything I have. Liam nodded slowly. And eventually he slept. The next morning Liam came out with his shoes already on. I want to go back to our house, he said simply. Sophie looked at Raymond. Raymond nodded. Then we go back, Sophie said. In the warehouse Vivian had been watching since 6 in the morning. She had watched the lights go on in the small apartment the night before and sat alone in the dark, feeling the agony of a mother who can see her children but cannot reach them. She called Solomon at midnight. Tomorrow, she said. Flat and completely certain. Tomorrow we go. I will be there at 8, he said. At 8:30 Sophie and Raymond walked the children back. Liam walked in front. Straight-backed. Unhurried. Like his mother. Tyler opened the door. You cannot come in. These children live here, Raymond said. Not anymore. Liam stepped forward. This is my mother's house. And I am going inside. He pushed past Tyler. Tyler pushed back. Isla screamed into the house. Victor appeared at the top of the stairs shouting. Diane threatened to call the police. The noise spilled onto the street. Neighbors appeared at windows. Loud. Ugly. Completely without dignity. Nobody heard the car pull up. Nobody saw the door open. Nobody noticed anything until Liam looked past Tyler's shoulder toward the street, and his whole body went completely still. Tyler noticed and turned around. Diane looked up. Victor froze at the top of the stairs. Isla stopped screaming. Everyone stopped. Because Vivian Cole was standing at the end of her front path. Alive. Grey coat. Back straight. Eyes completely calm. Looking at her house and everyone in it like a woman who had been waiting for this moment her entire life. 3 full seconds of complete silence. Then Diane made a sound that started very deep and came out as something between a scream and a sob. A ghost, she screamed. It is a ghost. She ran into the kitchen and pressed herself into the corner behind the door, shaking with both hands over her mouth. Tyler scrambled away and fell over his own feet. Isla screamed and ran upstairs. Victor grabbed the banister. She is dead. His voice was wild and cracking. She is dead. He turned and ran upstairs and disappeared. Claire grabbed her boys and pressed against the living room wall, white-faced and silent. The house erupted. Screaming from upstairs. Crying from the kitchen. Doors slamming. Pure chaos. Vivian did not look at any of them. She walked up the path and through the front door and looked only at her children. Liam was standing exactly where he had been. Staring at his mother. Trying to be strong and failing completely. "Mummy," he said. His voice broke on the word. Vivian dropped to her knees and pulled both children into her arms and held them with everything she had. Ava cried immediately. The full body crying of an 8-year-old who has been holding something too big for too long and has finally been given permission to put it down. Liam held on and said nothing. Both arms around his mother. His whole body shaking with the effort of staying quiet. "I am here," Vivian said into their hair. "I am right here. I am not going anywhere." She said it over and over. Like a promise. Like water after a very long drought. She pulled back after a long time and looked at her children's faces properly for the first time in weeks. Really looked. At Liam, whose jaw was so tight and whose eyes were so wet, and who had clearly been carrying everything quietly the way she had taught him without meaning to. At Ava, who still had her stuffed rabbit pressed against her chest, and who was looking at her mother the way you look at something you were terrified you had imagined. "I missed you," Ava whispered. "I missed you more than you will ever know," Vivian said. She pressed her forehead against both of theirs and closed her eyes. And for just that one moment nothing else existed. Not the house. Not the chaos. Not Diane behind the kitchen door or Victor hiding upstairs. Just her children. Just this. Sophie stood in the doorway with both hands over her mouth. Raymond stood beside her with his head down and his eyes closed. Solomon stood at the end of the path and looked at the sky. After a long time Vivian pulled back and held her children's faces in her hands. "I need you to go upstairs with Sophie and Raymond now," she said gently. "I need to speak to some people. Then I am coming straight up to you. I promise." "You promise," Ava said. "On everything I have." Liam looked at his mother for one long moment. Then he took his sister's hand and they went upstairs. Vivian stood up. Straightened her coat. "Diane. Victor. Come out now." Silence. "I will not ask again." The kitchen door moved slowly. Diane appeared. Gray-faced. Shaking. Unable to look directly at Vivian. Victor came down the stairs holding the banister the whole way like a man who did not trust his legs. "How?" he said. "We buried. The hospital." "Sit down, Victor." He sat on the bottom stair immediately. Diane lowered herself onto the hallway chair. Solomon came in and closed the front door. He opened his laptop and turned it around. The CCTV footage began to play. Diane going through her jewelry. Victor on the phone about the East London property. Victor dismissing the will with a wave of his hand. Liam standing outside his old bedroom door. Ava sitting alone in the hallway with her rabbit. Diane grabbing Ava's arm at the dinner table. Victor dragging Liam by his collar to the front door. All four of them thrown out onto the street. Sandra calling to ask about the jewelry. Every moment. Captured. Time-stamped. Undeniable. Complete silence. Diane was crying. Victor was staring at the floor. When it finished, Vivian spoke. "I gave you both everything I had. 4 years. Your rent. Your bills. Your children's school fees. Your food. Your clothes. Your holidays. Everything. Without complaint. Without condition. Nobody spoke. 3 months before I got sick, I came to you both and asked for help with my business. Just a loan. Just something to hold things steady. You both told me things were too tight." Diane looked at the floor. Victor said nothing. "And the moment you believed I was gone, you walked into my home. You threw my children out onto the street. You put your hands on my daughter. You tried to sell my property before I was even cold. Silence. I want you out of my house. Today. Everything you brought goes with you. Ada, please, Victor started. Do not, she said. He stopped. She looked at them both for a long moment. And then something happened that neither of them expected. Her expression did not harden. It softened. I loved you, she said. I still do. And that is the most painful part of all of this. You did not do this to a stranger. You did it to someone who would have given you anything. Someone who already was. She paused. I am not going to punish you. I am not going to spend a single day of the life I have left being angry at you. You are my family and nothing changes that. But I am done carrying you. Both of you. That part is over. She turned toward the stairs. 2 hours, she said quietly. Solomon will be here. And she went upstairs to her children. Diane and Victor were gone within 2 hours. Diane left without a word. No backward glance. No sorry. Victor stood at the door for a moment looking up the staircase. He opened his mouth once. Closed it. Picked up his bags and walked out. Claire stopped in front of Solomon. Tell her I am sorry, she said quietly. I sat beside that little girl in the hallway. I put my arm around her. And then my husband called and I got up and left her sitting there alone. I knew it was wrong every single day and I said nothing. I will tell her, Solomon said. Claire took her boys and left. The door closed. The house was quiet. The following morning Vivian called Sophie and Raymond to the kitchen. She looked at them both. At everything she had watched them do from those screens in the warehouse. Every quiet act of love performed without recognition or reward. Sophie. I am increasing your salary immediately. And I am funding whatever education or training you want. Whatever you want to do with your life, I will support it completely. Sophie opened her mouth. Do not argue with me, Vivian said. A tear ran quietly down Sophie's face. Raymond. I am funding your own restaurant. Whatever you need. Location. Equipment. Staff. It is done. Mrs. Cole. Vivian, she said. After everything we have been through, you call me Vivian. I do not know what to say, he said quietly. You do not have to say anything, she said. You already said everything that needed saying. Every morning when you made sure I ate. Every time you showed up without being chased. Actions. Not words. You taught me that. She wrote Diane and Victor each a letter that afternoon. She told them she loved them. Still. That what they had shared growing up had bound them in ways betrayal could damage but not destroy. She told them the funding was stopping. Completely. No more rent. No more bills. No more school fees. They were adults and it was time they stood on their own feet. She told them she forgave them. Not because what they did was acceptable, but because she refused to carry their weight inside her chest any longer. She sealed both letters and gave them to Solomon. She wrote a shorter note to Sandra and Pauline. I know who you are now. I wish you well. But I am done. Solomon called that evening. The specialist called this morning, he said carefully. Your latest scans. The treatment is working. It is still early. But it is working. She sat very still. She had been fighting for so long. Through the warehouse. Through the weeks of watching. Through the treatment that made her feel worse before it made her feel better. Now Solomon was telling her it was holding. She pressed her hand flat on the desk and looked at James's photograph. And for the first time in a very long time she let herself feel the hope. All of it. Completely. Okay, she said softly. Her voice broke on the word. Just slightly. Just enough. Okay. Keep fighting, Solomon said gently. You are not done yet. No, she said straightening up. I am not done yet. 3 months later Vivian sat at the head of her dining table on a Sunday afternoon. The table was full. Solomon laughing at something Liam said. Raymond talking about his restaurant in Notting Hill with the joy of a man doing exactly what he was born to do. Sophie beside Ava helping with a puzzle and occasionally saying something so sharp and funny the whole table stopped and stared at her. Ava sitting close enough to her mother that their arms were touching. Liam eating with the dedication of someone who had decided this was the best meal ever made. Vivian looked at all of them. At the people who had stayed. Not because she was wealthy. Not because she paid their bills. But because of who she was when everything else was stripped away. Just her. And it had been enough. It had always been enough. She felt James in the room the way she always did on Sunday afternoons. In the warmth of it. In the noise. In the way Liam laughed exactly the way his father used to. She looked at his photograph on the shelf. I figured it out, she thought. It took longer than it should have. But I figured it out. And I am still here to enjoy it. The table erupted in laughter, and the sound filled every corner of the room and spilled into every space that had recently held something cold and dark and temporary. Vivian laughed too. Fully. Without holding anything back. The way a woman laughs when she is finally in the right room with the right people and she knows it all the way down to her bones. And she is still alive to feel it. Outside London carried on the way it always did. Loud and grey and completely indifferent. But inside a townhouse in Mayfair, a woman who had spent her entire life giving everything she had to people who took it without seeing her had finally learned the most important lesson of all. That the people worth keeping are not the ones who stay because of what you give them. They are the ones who stay when you have nothing left to give. She had found them. In a lawyer who never hung up. In a chef who made sure she ate. In a maid who dragged a mattress down a hallway at 10 o'clock at night. She had found them. And she was never letting them go. She looked around her table one more time. At all of it. At all of them. And she thought of the woman sitting alone in that dark warehouse just 3 months ago. Watching her family on 6 small screens. Thinking she had lost everything. She had not lost everything. She had finally found what mattered. And it had been sitting right there all along. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button right now because we have so many more stories just like this one coming your way. We will see you in the next one.